Michael Greger, MD, has been the Chief Bovine Spongiform Encephalopathy Investigator for Farm Sanctuary since 1993, and the Mad Cow Coordinator for the Organic Consumers Association since 2001. Dr. Greger has debated the National Cattlemen's Beef Association before the FDA and was invited as an expert witness at the infamous Oprah Winfrey meat defamation trial. Dr. Greger is a graduate of the Cornell University School of Agriculture and the Tufts University School of Medicine. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Michael Greger.
We are day 37 of the mad cow disease crisis here in the United States. Weeks ago, I invited representatives from the National Cattlemen's Beef Industry to be here with us tonight. Unfortunately, the cattlemen declined the invitation, but I know what they'd say anyway. They'd say that American beef is safe to eat. Even if you ate a burger from the mad cow herself, not a problem. Because the infection isn't in the meat, right? That's myth number one. Even if the meat is infectious, though, they tested all those downer cows right before they went onto our plates. That's myth number two. And anyways, this was just one isolated case from that far-off island of Canada. There's no way we could have an epidemic of mad cow disease here in the U.S. because we test so many cows for the disease. Myth number three. And even if we do have a few mad cows running around, the disease can't spread because we banned that whole cow cannibalism thing years ago, right? Myth number four. And what's the big deal anyway? There were thousands of mad cows in Britain, and only 150 people got the disease. Myth number five. Good evening. What I'd like to do is put the first uncovered U.S. case in perspective, talk about where this disease came from in the first place, and then speculate on where it may be going. Should be lots of time for questions at the end. If, however, questions arise later on, please feel free to contact me anytime for anything. Here's my contact information, my phone number, email address. For those of you who want to stay on top of this volatile issue, I encourage people to go to the Mad Cow website I run for the Organic Consumers Association at organicconsumers.org. Also, there should be a clipboard circulating for those of you who just want updates every few weeks or so. I also have a listserv which you can subscribe to by sending a blank email to that address, or you can just sign up on the clipboard. The single best piece of writing ever on this disease was a book by Rampton and Stauber called Mad Cow USA, which is coming out in paperback next month, but if you just can't wait, it's available free, full text online at www.prwatch.org. According to the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, 76 million Americans every year come down with food poisoning. If you do the math, that's like 1 in 4 of us every year. Remember that 24-hour flu you had earlier this year or last year? Well, there's no such thing as a 24-hour flu. You most likely got food poisoning. In today's food safety lottery, there's about a 1 in 840 chance that you'll be hospitalized, and about 1 in 55,000 that we Americans will die every year from a food-borne illness. Happens in our restaurants. Thousands of Americans go out to eat and kind of don't come back. It happens in our schools. Tragically, the cases of food poisoning among American school children are increasing, according to a congressional report, at a rate of 10% every year. and it happens in our homes. USDA surveys year after year, for example, show that up to 9 out of 10 Thanksgiving turkeys are contaminated with Campylobacter, the most common bacterial cause of food poisoning. And 75% of these birds are contaminated with 2 or more foodborne diseases. Salmonella is most often the second one, which is growing dangerously resistant to 5 major classes of antibiotics in this country. Ironically, on Columbus Day weekend, 2002, Pilgrim's Pride, our nation's second largest poultry corporation, ordered the biggest meat recall in U.S. history. 27 million pounds of infected deli meat. These ready-to-eat turkey and chicken products were contaminated with a bacteria called Listeria. Listeria strikes thousands of Americans every year, usually infects the brain. About 1 in 5 people who get the disease die, particularly the infants and the elderly. And the reason Listeria bacteria are so frightening is that they can grow to alarming, dangerous levels, even in refrigerated foods. They are remarkably cold-tolerant organisms. Of course, there's still that jack-in-the-box E. coli 015787. Summer of that same year, ConAgra recalled 19 million pounds of ground beef in the second largest beef recall in U.S. history. And my question is, where's the outrage? If 19 million pounds of beef distributed to half the country were infected with a deadly strain of E. coli by terrorists, we'd be going nuts. But when it's done by one of the largest and most powerful corporations in the United States, ConAgra, it is just business as usual. Consumers barely twitch when the corporate machine that controls our food supply ships out another load of meat tainted with feces. These are fecal pathogens. We've come to expect it. We Americans actually blame ourselves for not sterilizing our meat thermometers every time we check to see if our fecal contaminants are done. Every time we don't cook the crap out of it, literally. There is no reason for anyone to get E. coli poisoning. It is strictly a byproduct of our intensive confinement system of animal agribusiness, these so-called factory farms. Instead of cleaning up their own act, the meat industry has tried to shift responsibility for safety to the consumer. Ask yourself, is it reasonable that if a consumer undercooks a hamburger, their 3-year-old dies? Is that reasonable? The meat industry seems to think so. Anyway, Campylobacter, easily destroyed by proper cooking. Thankfully, we still have some big gun antibiotics to deal with the new super salmonella threat. Even Listeria and E. coli, all in all, pretty wimpy pathogens. I mean, after centuries of human beings eating the bodies and bodily fluids of other animals, you'd think Mother Nature could cook up a tad more nasty microbe. Well, let's use our imagination. What if there was something in our food supply that wasn't affected by cooking or antibiotics? Something new and undetectable, perhaps. Some ultimate pathogen, practically indestructible, evading our immune system and, causing some invariably fatal neurodegenerative disease? Science fiction? Well, as you can probably guess, no.